My name is Emily Graves, and 5 years ago, I buried an empty casket for my daughter. It's strange, isn't it? How something can break so quietly, like glass shattering underwater. There was no screaming, no sirens, just a phone call that changed everything. I was standing in the middle of a market in Morocco when it happened. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't, but I did. The voice on the other end was calm, rehearsed. Too calm. It said there'd been an accident. A small private plane had gone down somewhere, over the Rockies. My husband Marcus and our 4-year-old daughter Lily were on board. They didn't find their bodies, just a few pieces of the fuselage, Marcus's camera, still intact somehow, and Lily's favorite pink hair ribbon, tangled in a branch. That was it. I remember sitting on the floor of my hotel room, holding the ribbon, feeling like the world had tilted sideways and just refused to come back. You never expect to outlive your child. That's not how life is supposed to work. There's no map for it, no manual, just this cold, hollow ache that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. I flew home the next morning. Or maybe it was night. I can't remember. Time stopped making sense after that. Everything moved in slow motion. Friends came by. Food was left at my door. I nodded through conversations I don't recall. People said things like, "She's in a better place," and "At least they went together." But nothing felt real. I kept waiting for someone to wake me up. The funeral was quiet. Closed casket. There was nothing to put inside except a few photographs and the ribbon. I stood there, staring at it, wondering if I should feel something. Anger, grief, relief, anything. But mostly I just felt numb, like I'd disappeared with them. Afterward, I packed up our apartment, sold what I could, donated the rest. I didn't want reminders. I couldn't handle them. I left the city and moved back to the little town where I grew up, back to my mother's old house, tucked away near the lake. It was quiet, peaceful. No one knew me there anymore, and I liked it that way. I stopped photographing. I couldn't lift a camera without thinking of Marcus behind the lens or Lily running barefoot into the frame, asking if she could take the next one. The silence of that house felt safer than the noise of memory. Every room echoed a little too much. I'd catch myself listening for footsteps, a giggle, her voice calling, "Mommy, look at this." But it never came. I got a job shelving books at the local library, something simple, predictable, something that didn't ask anything of me except to show up and be quiet. I told myself I was healing, that I needed time. But if I'm being honest, I just didn't know how to live in a world that didn't have her in it. Grief is strange. It doesn't move in a straight line. Some days I'd be okay. I'd make coffee, go to work, smile at the neighbors. Other days, I'd find myself curled up in the hallway at 2 a.m., holding that ribbon like it was the only thing keeping me alive. People stopped asking after a while. They gave me space. Or maybe they just didn't know what to say anymore. I didn't blame them. I didn't have the words either. I remember one evening, maybe a year after the crash, I stood at the edge of the lake behind my house. The wind was picking up, and the water was dark, almost black. I remember thinking, if I stepped in and just kept walking, maybe I could find them. But I didn't. Something in me, maybe some small scrap of stubbornness or hope, kept me grounded, kept me breathing. And so I stayed, day after day, in that small house, in that small life, frozen in time. I still wore my wedding ring. Not because I thought Marcus might come back, but because taking it off felt like admitting that everything was really gone. I wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't sure I ever would be. It's strange what becomes your anchor. For me, it was Lily's room. I couldn't bring myself to pack it up. Her books, her toys, even the tiny fingerprints on the mirror. Everything stayed just as it was. I'd go in there sometimes and sit on her bed, trying to remember the sound of her laugh. The way her hair smelled after a bath. The way her fingers felt wrapped around mine. I held on to those memories like they were oxygen. And maybe that's what kept me going. Maybe that's what carried me through the years that followed. Just the hope, however fragile, that one day the pain might hurt a little less. That one day I'd find a way to keep living. I didn't know then that everything I believed was about to change again. It's been 5 years now. I work at the town library, shelve books during the day, and help organize the children's story hour on Saturdays. Most people around here know me as Miss Emily, the quiet librarian with a soft spot for poetry and old photo books. They don't ask too many questions, and I don't offer much. Every other Tuesday night, I host a small grief support group in the library's back room. Nothing fancy, just a circle of chairs, some tissue boxes, and a pot of coffee that's always too strong. I started it a couple years ago, mostly because I couldn't find anything like it when I needed it. It's helped more than I ever expected. Maybe because we don't try to fix each other. We just listen. I talk sometimes, but not often. When I do, I usually keep it simple. I say, grief doesn't disappear. You just learn to carry it differently. And I mean that. Some days the weight feels lighter. Other days it nearly knocks me down. But I keep carrying it. I still wear Lily's locket. A tiny silver heart with a photo inside. Her on one side, me on the other. I touch it when I'm nervous, or tired, or when the wind sounds like a little girl's laugh and I have to remind myself to breathe. That night started like any other. I'd made tea and curled up on the couch with an old blanket and the local news playing in the background. I wasn't really watching, just listening to the familiar hum of voices and headlines while flipping through a novel I'd read a dozen times before. And then something caught my ear. A reporter's voice shifted tone, urgency, breaking news, something about an earthquake near the border of Ecuador and Colombia. A rescue mission. I set my book down, suddenly paying attention. The footage was grainy, taken by a tourist on their phone. Dust, rubble, emergency lights. And then I saw them. A man and a girl walking toward an ambulance. He was helping her along, one arm wrapped around her protectively. She looked dazed, like she didn't quite know where she was. But it wasn't the setting or the earthquake that froze me. It was her face. The girl looked exactly like Lily. Not just kind of. Not in the way that every child might remind you of someone. I mean exactly. Same dark blonde hair, the way it curled at the ends. Same shape of her eyes. Even the way she held her hand to her chest, like she was trying to protect something precious. Sat up straight. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I grabbed the remote and rewound the segment. Watched it again. And again. Then I saw him. The man. He had a beard now, and he looked older, thinner, worn. But it was him. Marcus. I paused the video and just stared. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at that frozen image on the screen like it would explain itself if I looked hard enough. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the screen. Then I zoomed in. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. They were dead. I buried them. I grieved them. I lived 5 whole years with the understanding that they were gone forever. And yet, there she was. It felt like my body couldn't decide whether to pass out or throw up. My head was spinning. My stomach flipped. I clutched the locket around my neck so tightly it left an imprint in my skin. Every instinct in me was screaming, "Go. Find her. Find them. Now." But there was also this voice in the back of my mind. Quiet, careful, the part of me that had learned how to survive, that whispered, "What if it's not her? What if this is some cruel trick of the light? A coincidence?" Still, I knew. Somewhere deep in my bones, I felt it. That was Lily and Marcus, alive. After 5 years? Why? Why would he do this? The questions were already starting to pile up like a tidal wave. But the fear? That came first. Not for myself. For her? Where had they been all this time? Why was she in South America? Was she safe? Did she even know who I was? I sat there for hours, watching that same clip on repeat, my thoughts spiraling in every direction. And somewhere in all the chaos, one thing became crystal clear. I wasn't letting her go again. The next morning, I didn't even bother brushing my hair. I printed out screenshots from the news clip, stuffed them into a folder, and drove straight to the police station. My hands were still shaking when I walked up to the front desk. I asked to speak with someone, anyone, about a missing persons case. I told them it was urgent. A young officer met me in a small interview room. I laid everything out. The clip, the faces, the details. I told him my daughter Lily was declared dead 5 years ago, along with my husband, after a plane crash in the Rockies. But I'd seen her. I'd seen both of them. Alive. On television. In Ecuador. He was polite, patient, but I could see it in his eyes. That quiet, practiced kind of sympathy they teach you to give someone when you think they're not all there. He took the folder, flipped through it slowly, and said he'd forward it to a detective for review. I asked how long it might take. He said he didn't know. I walked out of that station with a pit in my stomach. That afternoon, I called my sister, Claire. She picked up on the second ring. I told her everything, every detail. I expected her to gasp, to say she believed me, to say she was booking a flight and coming over right away. But instead, there was this long pause, and then her voice, careful and quiet. Honey, are you sure this isn't just your mind trying to fill in the gaps? You've been through so much. Grief does strange things. I felt my throat tighten. Claire, I saw her. I know my daughter when I see her. She didn't say I was wrong, but she didn't say I was right either. I just don't want you to get hurt again. That night, I barely slept. I sat on the couch, scrolling through the footage frame by frame, zooming in on Lily's face, on Marcus's profile. I matched it side by side with old photos from before the crash. Same jawline, same tilt of the head, same camera hanging from his shoulder. And that's when it hit me. The camera. They'd found Marcus's camera in the crash wreckage. It was one of the only things recovered. I remember the officer handing it to me in a sealed bag, saying it was water damaged beyond repair. But in the news footage, the man was holding a camera. And not just any camera. The exact same model. An old film Nikon that Marcus had insisted on using even after everyone else switched to digital. It wasn't some common model you'd find in stores. It was rare, almost obsolete. I pulled up the crash report from my files. There it was, listed in the inventory. Nikon F5, corroded. I stared at that word, corroded, and felt the blood drain from my face. How could he be holding the same camera now? I started comparing everything, voice clips from old family videos to the few seconds of his voice that made it into the background of the news footage. His laugh was faint, but I could hear it. I knew that sound. I'd fallen in love with it once. Every night, I dug deeper. I found stills, rewound the clip, played it in slow motion. I became someone I didn't recognize. Obsessed, determined, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. It was like waking up from a coma. No one else believed me, but that didn't matter anymore. I believed me. After 2 days of digging, I took a chance and emailed the news station. I asked if they could connect me to the tourist who'd captured the footage. I didn't expect an answer. But the next morning I got one. His name was Darren, a travel blogger from Vancouver. He'd been backpacking through Ecuador when the earthquake hit. Said he'd just been in the wrong place at the right time. I begged him to talk, to show me anything he hadn't already shared online. He agreed. A few hours later, we were on a video call. I told him my story, and to my surprise, he didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss me. He said he remembered the man and girl. Clearly. Thought it was odd, actually, how the man didn't want to speak to any of the paramedics or reporters. Just kept his head down, kept walking. Darren sent me the raw footage he'd taken before the news outlet edited it down. The full clip was nearly 5 minutes long, and in that time, I saw more than I ever expected to. Marcus, if it was Marcus, was limping slightly. His arm was wrapped around the girl. And her face. It was Lily. She looked scared. Not injured, but scared. Like she didn't understand what was happening. I paused the video at the exact moment she glanced up toward the camera. Her eyes were wide, lips parted, and for just a second, I could have sworn she looked right at me. Darren also sent photos, high-res shots he hadn't posted anywhere. And with those photos came something even more valuable, a rough location. A town near the border. He didn't know the exact name, but he gave me landmarks, descriptions, the name of the hotel he stayed in nearby. And suddenly, I wasn't just chasing shadows anymore. I had something real. A thread to follow. I sat there with my laptop open. Those images burned into my mind. My heart racing like it used to when Marcus and I would catch flights last minute to nowhere in particular. Except this time, I wasn't. Going on an adventure. I was going to find my daughter. I booked the flight the next morning. One backpack, one ticket to Ecuador, and no real plan beyond the folder of screenshots and a name on a tourist blog. I didn't tell anyone. Not Claire. Not my therapist, not even the library where I worked. I just left. The plane ride felt endless. I stared out the window most of the time, watching the clouds blur into each other. My thoughts kept looping. What if I was wrong? What if this was just some desperate illusion I'd built to give meaning to 5 years of pain? But somewhere deeper, past the fear and doubt, was a certainty I couldn't shake. I knew it was her. I landed in Quito, then took a bus south toward the region Darren had described. Dusty roads, jagged hills, heat that clung to your skin. I found a translator named Luis, who agreed to drive me into the mountains near the border. When I told him what I was looking for, he didn't ask many questions. Just nodded and said, "There are a few towns out that way where foreigners disappear. Live quiet lives. You might find your ghost." It was late afternoon when we rolled into the village. The streets were narrow, mostly unpaved, and the buildings were small, faded. Walls, rusted roofs, laundry strung between balconies like flags. It didn't look like the kind of place someone would run to, but maybe that was the point. Luis dropped me at a tiny guest house run by an older woman who spoke no English but seemed kind. I thanked him, told him I'd call if I needed a ride, back. Then I started walking. The town square was quiet, just a few children kicking a ball near the fountain. My heart was racing. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. A sign, maybe. Something to prove I hadn't lost my mind. That's when I saw the mural. It was painted on the wall of a community center. A bright, messy swirl of color. Houses, sun, flowers, and in the center, a girl holding hands with a tall man and a woman. The figures were simple, childlike, but the detail in the little girl's face was unmistakable. Blonde curls, blue eyes, a ribbon in her hair, and in the corner, the name, Liliana. I felt like the ground shifted beneath me. I just stood there, staring at it, unable to move. Liliana. Not Lily, but close enough. Too close. My heart was pounding in my ears. I whispered her name, softly, just to hear how it sounded in the air. That night, I sat in my room and waited. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just watched the street from the little balcony, clutching my camera like it was the only thing holding me together. Around 9, I saw them. A man and a girl walking up the road, laughing about something. He was holding a small grocery bag. She skipped beside him, light on her feet, twirling as she talked. Her voice floated up toward me, clear, sweet, familiar in a way that made my throat tighten instantly. It was her. Lily. My knees buckled. I had to grip the railing just to stay upright. She was taller now. Her hair was longer, but the way she moved, the shape of her face, the sound of her voice, it was her. Without a doubt. Marcus walked beside her, older, with a beard and sun-weathered skin, but still him. They looked like a father and daughter on any ordinary night, like a family. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed time. I needed answers. So I followed them, quietly, at a distance. For 2 days, I watched as they moved through the village, visiting the bakery, chatting with neighbors, walking hand in hand to the market. I took pictures, recorded video. Every second made my heart hurt more. I didn't see a woman with them at first, and I started to wonder if maybe it had just been Marcus and Lily all this time. Maybe I'd imagined the rest. But then, late on the second evening, I saw her. She stepped out of the house and called for them to come inside. Lily ran to her, wrapped her arms around her waist, called her Mama. And that's when something inside me cracked. It wasn't just that Marcus had survived. It was that he'd taken Lily with him, raised her as someone else, given her a new name, a new mother. I couldn't breathe. I walked away before they saw me. I made it back to the guest house and collapsed onto the bed, shaking. The betrayal was bigger than anything I could have imagined. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was something else, something darker, a hollow ache mixed with rage. That night, I called Darren again, told him what I'd found. He knew someone, an old friend who worked for a nonprofit in the area, a guy who had connections and knew how to ask questions quietly. By the next afternoon, I had what I needed. Marcus had been living here under a different name, fake documents, a new life. According to the contact, he showed up with a child 5 years ago and said his wife had died in an accident. No one questioned it. They kept to themselves mostly, paid in cash, helped out around the village. The woman? Her name was Anna. She used to work at the same photo studio Marcus freelanced for. Back in the States, she followed him here, and together, they became Liliana's new parents. They had built an entire life on a lie, and I was done watching it from a distance. The next morning, I stood outside their house with my heart thudding so loudly, I thought it might echo through the door. My hands were sweating, fists clenched at my sides, and for a second I almost turned around. But I didn't. I couldn't. I raised my hand and knocked. The door opened after a few seconds, and there he was. Marcus, older, leaner, his beard a little grayer than I remembered. He was holding a coffee mug, wearing a t-shirt like it was just any other day. And then he saw me. His face went completely pale, The mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. "Emily?" he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't speak. I couldn't. We just stared at each other, frozen in this awful silent moment. Then I heard footsteps. Lily, Anna, appeared at the top of the stairs, barefoot, hair still damp from a shower. She looked down at me with a confused expression, her small hands gripping the railing. "Dad? Who's that?" Her voice broke something open inside me. It was softer now, older, but still her. Still Lily. Marcus turned slightly, glancing up at her, then back at me. "Go upstairs, sweetie. I'll be there in a second." She hesitated. "But now," he said more firmly. She lingered for a second longer before disappearing back into the hallway. The moment she was gone, I stepped inside without waiting for permission. My legs were shaking, but I forced myself to stay. Steady. Marcus didn't stop me. I stood in the middle of their tiny living room, looking around at the life they'd built. The photos on the wall, the drawings taped to the fridge, a school backpack by the door. All of it like a punch to the chest. 5 years, I said, my voice low. You let me believe she was dead for 5 years. Marcus looked at me, eyes wide with guilt, maybe even fear. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally spoke. I didn't know what else to do. Don't, I snapped. Don't even start with that. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck like he used to when he got caught in a lie. You were always gone, Emily. Always working, always somewhere else. I felt like I was raising her alone. And when the crash happened, when I saw a way out, you took it. He nodded. I thought maybe it was a sign, a clean slate, a chance to start over. Anna was there. She understood. I didn't plan it. Not at first. You didn't plan it? I laughed, but it came out hard and bitter. You faked your deaths, Marcus. You moved across the world. You changed her name. You told her I was dead. That sounds a lot like planning to me. He didn't answer. I took a step closer, my voice trembling. You didn't just leave me. You didn't just steal my child. You erased me. You rewrote her whole life without me in it. She calls someone else mom. Do you know what that feels like? He didn't meet my eyes. You could have asked for a divorce, I said. You could have fought me for custody. You could have done literally anything else. But this was cruelty. You took everything from me. I thought I was protecting her, he said, almost too quietly. You were never home, always flying somewhere, always with your camera, chasing the next assignment. I was scared you'd disappear on her. My mouth dropped open. So instead, you disappeared with her. He winced at that. I know I was wrong. But I loved her. I still do. And I thought, God, I thought I could give her something better. I could feel myself unraveling. All the nights I'd cried on the floor. The birthdays I spent, alone. The guilt, the therapy, the wondering if I'd done something to deserve it. And he was standing here justifying it all with some twisted version of love. She cried for you, he said suddenly. At first, all the time. It nearly broke her. But Anna helped. She helped us both. Tears were streaming down my face. Now, but I didn't care. You didn't just take her. You taught her to forget me. He looked like he wanted to say more, but I didn't let him. You don't get to decide who I am to her. That's my daughter. You stole 5 years of her life from me. 5 years I'll never get back. His eyes welled up, but I didn't feel sorry for him. Not for a second. I turned toward the stairs, then stopped. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not losing her again. You don't get to choose anymore. Marcus didn't try to stop me as I walked out the door. He just stood there in the wreckage of his own lies, watching me go. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt something, close to power. I went straight to the embassy the next morning, still numb from everything that had unfolded the night before. I brought my photos, my documents, the crash report, and proof of who I was. I told them everything, every unbelievable detail. To their credit, they listened, and they took me seriously. The next few hours were a blur. Meetings with consular officers, phone calls to local authorities. They launched an investigation immediately. Marcus and Anna were arrested within 2 days. I wasn't there when they came to take them in, but I heard from one of the officers that Marcus didn't resist. He just looked tired. Anna, on the other hand, sobbed the whole time, clutching Lily, no, Anna, so tightly it took 2 people to separate them. That image haunted me, not because I pitied her, but because it reminded me that, to Lily, this woman was her mother. She didn't know any different. When they brought Lily into foster care, I was waiting there already. I sat in the hallway, heart pounding, watching through the window as she clung to the social worker, her small hands white-knuckled around the woman's arm. Her eyes were wild with fear, darting around the unfamiliar room. And when she saw me, nothing. No flicker of recognition. No warmth. Just confusion. The social worker tried to introduce me gently. This is Emily. She's someone very special who's known you for a long time. Lily just looked at me, blinking slowly. Then she whispered, I want to go home. It nearly broke me. I had imagined this moment so many times. Us running into each other's arms, her remembering something, anything. But the reality was harder than I'd prepared for. She didn't know me. And in her mind, I was the stranger tearing her life apart. I left the room and sat in my car for a long time. I didn't even cry at first. I just stared at the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. Eventually, the tears came. And when they did, they didn't stop. I cried for everything. For the lost birthdays, the scraped knees I didn't get to kiss, the bedtime stories I never got to finish. I cried for the years Marcus stole from me, for the bond I'd once had with my daughter, now severed by time and lies. But I didn't give up. The next day, I came back, this time with a small photo album I'd put together. Pictures from when she was a baby, her second birthday, her first time building a snowman, a faded drawing she'd made in preschool with Mommy written in the corner. I brought her favorite stuffed rabbit, at least it used to be. I wasn't sure she'd even remember it. She sat stiffly across the room, arms folded, clearly overwhelmed and scared. I didn't force anything. I just laid the items out on the table between us and talked softly. Told her stories. Little things. How she used to love pancakes shaped like animals. How she once tried to eat crayons because she thought the purple one looked like candy. She didn't laugh, but she listened, and that was enough. Over the next few days I kept coming back. Same time, same room. Always bringing something from the past. A song I used to sing her to sleep. A small pair of glittery shoes she once refused to take off for a week. I watched her slowly soften, her posture relaxing just a little, her eyes staying on mine a little longer each time. One afternoon, she picked up the photo album and flipped through it slowly. She pointed at one picture of her as a toddler, chocolate cake smeared across her cheeks. That's me? She asked quietly. Yeah, I said, my throat catching. That was your third birthday. She stared at the photo, then looked up at me. Why did he say you were gone? It took everything I had to keep my voice steady. Because he didn't want me found, I said gently. But I never stopped looking for you. Not once. She didn't say anything after that. just kept flipping through the pictures. But something shifted. I could feel it. A tiny door had opened, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see me not as a stranger, but as someone who loved her. The psychologist assigned to her case, Dr. Torres, was kind and calm, with a voice like velvet. She told me not to rush it, that Lily would need time to untangle what was real and what had been told to her. She's trying to hold two worlds at once right now, she said. Let her do it slowly, with you beside her. So I did. I showed up every day. I let Lily lead the conversations. When she wanted silence, we sat quietly. When she wanted stories, I told her everything I could remember. I never pushed. I just stayed. And one day, about 2 weeks after the arrest, she leaned over during one of our visits and took my hand. Just for a second. It was the smallest gesture. But for me, it felt like the earth moved. She didn't call me Mom. Not yet. And that was okay. I wasn't there to force memories back into her. I was there to build new ones, one at a time. It's been 7 months now. Lily and I live in a quiet coastal town, the kind with crooked sidewalks and neighbors who wave when they see you, the kind where no one asks too many questions, and the air smells like salt and fresh bread. We moved into a small cottage just a short walk from the beach. Nothing fancy. White shutters, a tiny garden, creaky floors. But it's ours. It's peaceful. It feels like a beginning. The courts granted me full custody after the hearings. Marcus and Anna are both serving time now. There's still more paperwork, more hearings to come, but none of that matters as much as this. Lily is home. She still calls me Emily sometimes. Other times she slips and says Mom, then looks embarrassed, like she's not sure if she's allowed to. I always smile and tell her it's okay, that she can call me whatever she needs to, for as long as she needs to. And she usually just nods and keeps coloring or reading or whatever it is we're doing that day. We cook together now. She loves stirring things, especially when flour gets everywhere. We read before bed, and sometimes she picks books I used to read to her when she was a toddler, ones she doesn't even remember but still somehow reaches for. We walk the beach in the mornings before school. She collects shells and carries them in her pockets until they overflow. There's a jar by the window where we keep her favorites. Some are chipped, others smooth, but each one has a story. I used to think I wanted everything back the way it was. The life we had. The version of her that knew me completely. But I don't feel that way anymore. I've let that go. What I have now isn't the past returning. It's something new. Something real. Some nights we bake. Some afternoons we paint seashells on the porch. One time, she painted one blue with tiny gold stars and told me it was her wish shell. I asked what she wished for, and she shrugged. More days like this. And then one evening, while we were folding laundry, she looked up at me and asked, "Why didn't you stop looking?" I didn't even have to think. "Because a mother knows her child is out there," I said. Even when the whole world says otherwise. She didn't say anything back. She just leaned into my side and rested her head on my arm. And for a moment, I felt whole again. We're still figuring things out day by day. There are moments when she gets quiet, when something triggers a memory she doesn't know how to explain, but she's trying, and so am I. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've lost someone too, or maybe you've had to fight just to be heard. If you have, I want you to know, you're not alone. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Maybe we can help each other heal. And if this story meant something to you, if it moved something in you, consider subscribing. I have more to share.